Obviously, now we're in a completely different place. People are brands, investors, owner. I mean, everybody is coming to the table and understanding that women's sports is good business. It's such a fun and exciting time, and I am glad I've I'm glad I've stuck with it all these years to get to be part of what's now very exciting.
Welcome back to the Clark Update. WNBA fans, we have a major story breaking right now. Caitlin Clark's rough treatment in the league has officially caught the eye of actual lawmakers, sparking serious calls for accountability and even the very real threat of a federal investigation. But what exactly went down? What is Caitlin Clark's camp saying about it? And why is WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelberg suddenly facing all this heavy pressure? Let's jump straight into the details today and break this whole situation down. The WNBA is dealing with a major shift right now, and it has nothing to do with final scores or highlight reels. What started out as just a few hard fouls against Caitlin Clark has quickly escalated into something far more dangerous than anyone ever predicted. Everyday fans might never truly grasp what is going on behind closed doors, especially with intense panic in the boardrooms, rising government-level inquiries, and growing whispers of actual federal involvement. Think about it. When was the last time you heard about the Department of Justice taking a hard look at a professional sports league? It almost never happens. Yet, the treatment Clark faces on the court is now landing directly on federal desks. With powerful lawyers with deep ties to Washington, here is the wild part. This was no accident. Team insiders claim that every single shove, every blindside hit and careless foul was closely monitored and recorded, which was then systematically built into a strategy that looks more like a legal chess match than basketball. The WNBA truly believed this was just about sports. But Caitlin Clark's camp has quietly turned this into a major conflict that the league might not be able to handle anymore. This is no longer just a simple rookie storyline. This is a story about money, power, and how the biggest star in women's basketball just forced the entire league into an unexpected high-stakes showdown. On the surface, everything looks pretty straightforward. Caitlin Clark was the most anticipated rookie in WNBA history, bringing sold-out arenas, record-breaking TV ratings, and unprecedented buzz to women's basketball. She was set up to be the star who would push the WNBA into the mainstream, their ultimate future, and their golden ticket. Yet, along with all that attention, something darker began to emerge. Right from the jump, Clark wasn't just being tested, she was actively being singled out, and fans everywhere were watching the viral footage. Remember when Kennedy Carter blindsided her right in front of the cameras, like she was making an NFL play? Then Diamond DeShields charged right into her, and Marina McBraw shoved her so hard, hoping nobody would notice, that the whole scene looked more like a hockey fight than basketball. Even seasoned veteran Tina Charles snuck in a cheap shot to Clark's back. These were not isolated incidents. These clips quickly became a recurring theme, forming a clear pattern that went totally viral on social media. At first, the narrative was totally predictable. Welcome to the WNBA, now go toughen up. Commentators and analysts dismissed the rough play as a standard welcome for a rookie, while league executives chose to stay completely silent. There were no public warnings, no official statements, and zero disciplinary actions. But fans watching at home weren't buying that excuse. They watched the viral compilations and the hashtags demanding safety, and they studied the slow-motion footage showing Clark getting hit harder than anyone else on the floor. What started as tough physical defense quickly transformed into something much darker. One player clearly had a target on her back. But Clark's inner circle saw things differently than the media, which just dismissed it as standard rookie hazing. They saw a pattern that could be weaponized, exploited, and eventually turned into a major federal issue that the WNBA was absolutely not prepared to handle. These were not just random sporadic fouls or heat-of-the-moment plays. It was a highly calculated effort to test Caitlin Clark, completely throw off her rhythm, and make her hesitate every single time she touched the ball. This was part of a larger, systemic league culture, with players openly admitting to it in locker rooms, sending a very clear message directly to Clark. You have to pay your dues to play in this league, let alone run it. But this is exactly where things get dangerous. That locker room chatter did not stay secret for long. Clark's representation, one of the most powerful agencies in sports, was quietly keeping score. Like building evidence for a trial, every single shove, elbow, and hostile comment from an opponent was recorded, time-stamped, and filed away. They were not just mad that Clark was getting beat up on the court. Instead, they were building a real case to shift this entire conversation from basketball to the legal and political arenas. Think about it, her team was already 3 steps ahead, framing her harsh treatment on the court as a case of workplace harassment, not just sports drama. While average fans argued about whether she just needed to toughen up, look, when you actually start using the term harassment, the entire game changes instantly. That is because harassment plays out in federal offices, where the strict language of civil rights law becomes the official playbook, rather than just locker rooms or ESPN studios. Clark's camp understood exactly what they were doing, especially since they had expected this scenario from the very beginning. They were well aware that a superstar with her level of prominence would face physical targeting, animosity, and jealousy. So they prepared for it, turned that reality into a weapon, and quietly bided their time until the absolute perfect moment to strike. That is why this escalation felt so incredibly abrupt to everyone else. Behind the scenes, Clark's team had already arranged the pieces like a chessboard, and they were fully prepared to back the WNBA into an unavoidable corner while the league office was busy sleeping at the wheel. The exact moment Washington got dragged into this storm marked a massive turning point. What looked to the general public like just another standard sports scandal suddenly got federal attention, and it all started with one single letter. That is when WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelberg received an official, highly formal notification from Senator Jim Banks. Even though the general public dismissed it as simple political posturing, insiders knew it was anything but random. That letter was not written just to grab headlines. It was carefully timed, legally precise, fully prepared for the official record, and designed to produce a clear paper trail leading to government review. Here is why that is so important. Federal agencies like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or the Department of Justice do not actually need press conferences to step in and take action. They do not even need to make public threats or announce their investigations. All it takes is one single plausible trigger for Clark's camp to quietly spark preliminary reviews behind closed doors, such as a letter from a senator or the mountain of documented evidence they have already been gathering. Internal notes get written down, private phone calls are made, official information is requested, and nobody outside those offices even knows about it until the story suddenly breaks. This is no longer about hard fouls or missed calls. Discrimination and harassment on the job are governed by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And if it can be clearly demonstrated that Clark is receiving different treatment than other players, particularly if it is tied directly to her gender, her race, or her professional status, then the WNBA is suddenly dealing with a problem that is far bigger than a simple public relations headache. They are facing potential, direct exposure to the federal government. Federal exposure also brings mandatory transparency, structural reforms, and the absolute worst-case scenario for any sports league. That is called discovery, the legal process that drags every private correspondence, internal email, and unsaid truth directly into the light. If the legal side of this does not scare WNBA executives, the harsh economic realities definitely should. The statistics show that Caitlin Clark is far more than just a rookie. She is the league's most valuable asset ever, with merchandise sales climbing by over 600% since her debut. Even subscriptions for League Pass have jumped by over 60%. Additionally, TV ratings for the games she plays are easily doubled or even tripled compared to the games she does not. The moment her name is on the schedule, ticket prices soar. That is not just growth, that is pure dependency, and the league knows it. With every hard shove and unprotected foul, it is not just Clark's body at stake. The WNBA's entire financial future is on the line. What happens if Clark suffers a severe injury because of this targeting? WNBA viewership instantly craters. The WNBA's spectacular rise falls flat overnight as major sponsors start asking awkward questions and their momentum slows down. Because of this, league insiders claim that Clark's team has already weaponized these numbers without ever needing to make an open threat. They let the league do the math, simply pointing to the statistics. You are gambling on the future of the sport if you cannot defend the one player essential to your financial survival. And beyond that, since sponsors, networks, and investors do not tolerate uncertainty, it is impossible to ignore that kind of incredible leverage. These days, it is about much more than just fouls. The question is whether the WNBA will risk its own golden era by refusing to defend the player who created it. And the league is in for a harsh awakening if they believe that money is not going to dictate their next course of action. Because at the end of the day, economics only cares about results, not justifications. This is where things get even more chaotic, the cultural clash at the core of this entire league. Caitlin Clark is obviously not your average rookie. She is a heterosexual white woman entering a league that is openly LGBTQ+ and predominantly black. That should not matter on the court. Basketball is just basketball, plain and simple. But behind the scenes, those dynamic differences can easily breed real animosity and jealousy, sparking a cultural clash that absolutely nobody in the league office wants to talk about. In fact, former WNBA star Candace Wiggins warned everyone about this years ago, claiming she was actively shunned by the league because of her sexual orientation. Even though everyone brushed off her testimony back then, people are seeing it in a different light now. Did she map out the exact culture that Clark is dealing with today? Even the All-Star voting ended up revealing a telling story. With 1.3 million fan votes more than any player in league history, Clark shattered every single record. Yet, she landed down in 8th place among guards in the player-only voting. That is a matter of resentment, not skill. Dick Vitale and other analysts were quick to call it exactly what it is: pure envy. Besides, jealousy in professional sports is rarely ever harmless. It morphs into selective rule enforcement, hard fouls, and cold shoulders. According to league insiders, even the referees feel that Clark's rapid rise needs to be kept under control. Specifically, this means allowing opposing players to get way more physical with her on the court. This isn't a tough case to make. That is outright discrimination, and Clark's team is well aware of it. They aren't just framing this as a hyper-aggressive rivalry. Instead, they're portraying it as identity and status-related workplace harassment. Remember, federal civil rights laws were created to specifically address this exact type of prejudice. Because of this, this entire issue is no longer just limited to basketball. It is a major cultural flashpoint that has the potential to blow up well beyond the WNBA. Here's what really terrifies the WNBA. It's not the bad headlines or the viral hashtags, but the looming shadow of the discovery process. Because once a dispute enters federal territory, all internal memos and emails and private conversations can be laid bare for the world to see. Every office has ugly receipts. Let's be real. Executives complain in emails and refs talk in group chats. Coaches make candid remarks they would never want to see plastered across the front page of ESPN. However, all of that instantly becomes evidence if Clark's situation actually turns into a civil rights dispute. Just imagine the legal fallout if investigators uncover messages where league executives minimized these incidents, mocked complaints, or admitted they would just let the players handle it themselves. Suddenly, simple rivalries and hard fouls don't even matter anymore. At that point, it is about institutional failure at the highest level, real bias and sheer carelessness. Additionally, this discovery process could sweep in referees, team staff, and even private player-to-coach communications alongside the main league office. In federal court, every single text and note gets exposed. Supposedly harmless jokes can be weaponized directly against the league. That is why league insiders claim that corporate attorneys are currently working heavy overtime, not to fix what has already happened, but to prepare for what is surely coming next. Because sponsors, media outlets, and public watchdog organizations won't just look inside once that door to discovery finally opens up. They will drag every single detail into the light, and the fallout won't stop with the WNBA. The parent league, the NBA, could easily get dragged right into the mess. Sponsors backing an organization under a federal investigation would face intense heat, and major TV networks would have to explain why they ignored Clark's mistreatment while happily profiting from her record-breaking viewership. Decades of careful brand building could be completely wiped out overnight by just one lawsuit, one unsealed document, and one leaked email. And Clark's camp is fully aware they hold the quiet yet devastating leverage to force the league to air its own dirty laundry to the entire world. And this media juggernaut that has already spun completely out of control is the real match to the powder keg, even if lawyers and federal investigators weren't enough to scare them. At this point, Caitlin Clark is far more than just a basketball player. She is a permanent trending topic, a constant hashtag, and a daily headline. Every shove, every hard foul, and the league's silence instantly goes viral online. It's not just happening live on the court either. Millions of fans watch TikTok edits overnight, where dramatic music makes slow-motion replays go viral instantly, and fans demand answers during days-long Twitter arguments. Meanwhile, Mainstream talk shows, podcasts, and even late-night comedians are actively weighing in on the drama, painting Clark as either a golden girl who can't take the heat or the helpless victim of targeted bullying. Either way, she is constantly under the brightest spotlight, and that is exactly what puts the league in serious jeopardy. The WNBA no longer controls the mainstream narrative. Influencers, viral clips, and public outrage are driving the conversation now. Furthermore, nothing the commissioner says can ever compete with a 30-second highlight clip that goes viral across social media. On stage, celebrities are actually jumping onto musicians wearing Clark's jersey. In big interviews, actors are calling her names. In their stand-up acts, comedians constantly mock the league. She is far more than just an athlete now. She is a symbol. Furthermore, the story does not just stay in sports once you cross that line. It gets directly swept up in the ongoing culture wars. The noise only gets louder the more the WNBA attempts to ignore it, and vague comments only fuel more skepticism. Public outrage only grows when there is silence. Additionally, every viral article weakens the league's reputation while steadily building Clark's power. She is not just playing hoops at this point, she is soundly outperforming the entire league in the media game, and the court of public opinion has already begun delivering its verdict, whether the WNBA actually agrees with it or not. Look, it is not just what is happening that makes this drama so fascinating, it is also exactly when it is all going down. Make no mistake, nothing coming out of Caitlin Clark's camp right now is an accident. Every single quiet move and well-chosen remark feels like a calculated play, timed down to the exact second. Just think about it. Right when her rookie season is pulling in record-breaking ratings, those hard fouls on the court start piling up. While the online outrage explodes, the league stays quiet, just letting that frustration simmer on its own. That is when Caitlin Clark's team starts dropping subtle hints about targeted harassment and selective enforcement, slowly turning public sympathy into heavy pressure without ever having to say too much. Right as rumors of federal interest start to swirl. This is not chaos. It is highly calculated. They want the impact to hit like a championship wave the moment they finally drop an official filing. They have let the public outrage breathe, simply letting fans and the media do all the heavy lifting. And the WNBA's timing could not be any worse. This is the year the league is trying to position itself as the next big thing, selling unprecedented growth and cultural relevance to sponsors, major networks, and new fans alike. But viral videos of Caitlin Clark getting targeted on the court tell a very different story than flashy ads promising a bright future. It is the story of a league unable to keep its biggest star safe. Even that silence feels entirely intentional. By staying quiet, Caitlin Clark's camp is letting the tension build until the league is forced to make mistakes, forced to put out defensive statements that only end up weakening their own position. This is no longer a fight, it is a game of chess, and Caitlin Clark's team is not playing for sympathy. They are playing for maximum leverage at the most vulnerable moment in the history of the league. In high-stakes standoffs like this, timing is everything. It is the difference between making history and just making noise. So what does all of this mean for the rest of us? Caitlin Clark is no longer just a rookie trying to survive the toughest stretch of her young career. We have lawyers, lawmakers, federal investigators, and corporate sponsors, along with millions of fans watching her every single move as she sits at the center of this storm. What started out as just a few hard fouls has now exploded into something that could permanently change the entire world of professional sports. If Caitlin Clark's camp keeps pressing, the WNBA will have to answer for more than just its silence. This could literally force rule changes and set major new legal precedents, rewriting how all American professional leagues treat their players. Because if any athlete can prove that discrimination or harassment or civil rights violations can be used to justify this kind of targeted treatment, the floodgates open, and it becomes impossible to defend how the game is being run. The proof is right there. Front offices in every sport are silently praying they never face this nightmare scenario. But Caitlin Clark's case is already far too big for them to control. She is not just defending herself anymore. She is pushing the boundaries of what constitutes competition versus actual abuse. She is standing up against a system that has told players to suck it up, stay quiet, and sacrifice for the brand for decades. If she succeeds here, this will not just stop with the WNBA. It is going to send shockwaves through college sports, the NBA, the NFL, and beyond, shifting the power balance between leagues and players forever. That is why this whole story, actually has very little to do with basketball. No professional league has ever been prepared to handle this direct collision of power, money, culture, and identity. Caitlin Clark is at a major turning point in sports history, and one thing is certain. Regardless of whether you love her, hate her, or simply find yourself unable to take your eyes off the screen, there is more going on here than a basketball game. This is a real-time revolution. And the WNBA is learning the hard way that trying to silence your biggest star runs a serious risk of not only losing control of your league, but also permanently changing the very course of sports history.